There are two things in this world that both are necessary for life and can kill you. The first one is water. The second one is the podcast known as
Trapped Under Plastic, the podcast that shows even if you're painting something small, you can make it big. Oh, that's a lovely little Disney storyline right there. So what was the lead-in? What was the lead-in?
Oh, my fucking basement flooded.
Oh, I thought it was opera singing.
Yeah, there's water. I mean, I had this existential, like, as I'm pulling buckets of water out of my basement for 2 straight hours before the plumber got there. I had this epiphany about water, man. Like water is like, you need water, you know?
Yeah.
It's like
but
God's
it can,
water.
Kill you.
Yeah, dude, like what else is there a thing in this world where it's like, if you don't have it, you die. And if you have too much of it, you die.
Oxygen?
If you need it to live, can you die from oxygen?
Like pure oxygen, right? Like if you just like fucking inhale that shit, you die, right? Or you just like get loopy.
What situation would you ever be in where you'd have that?
Like in a
science fiction
like
movie?
in like a lab where they hook you up to an oxygen tank.
I think that's probably the bad guy in the latest Alien offshoot movie.
Oh yeah, or like a Bond movie where he like tries to kill you in like the most ridiculous of ways. I'm gonna fill this room with oxygen slowly over the next 36 hours, and you will die, Mr. Bond. Yeah, like that.
Until you use a nickel to unscrew all the screws in the ceiling and you escape.
Yeah.
No.
So did the water get into your hobby studio?
Yep.
Oh God, is all that carpet like fucked or?
No, it's not fucked, but it's not fucked.
Yeah, it's semi-fucked.
It's
okay.
pretty much dried out now. I'm gonna have a water specialist come in.
You got a motherfucking water specialist coming in, dude?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I just want to make sure. I don't want mold. I won't want stuff underneath there. But like, I have been running. We bought a second dehumidifier.
Nice.
We already have one in our regular, the basement kind of utility room area that was completely like an inch or two of water in. And then I bought a second one for that. I bought another big fan. I borrowed 3 big fans from my parents. And they've been running. This happened Friday, late afternoon. My daughter was in ice skating camp all week. And we were going to leave at 4:45 to go to her show. They had this big show that their whole thing they were preparing for the whole week. It was at like 5:15. We're going to leave at 4:45. I leave my room at 4:45 to feed the cats and go. And my feet are soggy. I'm like, as I'm walking out my room, I'm like, oh, the dog slobbered on here. That happens in my house all the time. My dog fucking slobbers on the carpet. I step on it and it feels like a puddle. And I'm like, oh, damn it, dog. And I look over there and I turn on the light to the utility room and it's fucking lake. I had been in there, I'm not shitting you, an hour earlier and nothing was wet.
Dude.
My sump pump had failed or it had been broken. My own fucking fault, I guess, for not staying on top of that. One of those things as an adult where it's like you have a million things to juggle. You don't stay on top of the one thing, then that thing fucking gets you.
Yep.
And we live on top of a fucking hill. So I'm like, whatever. And I have all of my downspouts for my house, so all the rain gets pushed away. There's PVC pipes, 6-inch PVC pipe that run underground. So the downspouts run into the PVC pipe. The PVC pipe runs down out of my yard to the edge of the yard, 40 feet away from my house. There should be fucking no way water gets in. Well, some pump fails. Also, I was like, shit, not much water, just a little bit under my desk got into my my studio area. So not very much. But I find out the next day, the other walls were the carpet was all wet. And in my closet, where I have all my boxes of Warhammer stacked up on the fucking floor because I had too much fucking hobby shit. The lowest level of all those boxes are just like
Sogtown.
like a soggy paper bag.
Yeah. Luckily, plastic is like totally impervious to that, so the models are fine, right?
Yeah, the models are fine. And it was nothing like, I mean, there was like some like bullshit horse heresy stuff, whatever. I don't give a shit. It's like, yeah, this is fine. Like a couple of boxes, I'm gonna have a toss. I had a big full army painter, their giant fucking paint box.
Mm-hmm.
I had a full box of that stuff on the floor, filled with like paints that I took off my walls that I don't use anymore. In my hurried rush to like pick up all these boxes. I'm like, oh, I got to get them and move them because they're all wet. I picked that up. Of course, it's a box filled with 100 paints. I picked that box up. The fucking bottom just drops out of it. And then 100 paints just go everywhere. I'm like, this is just what I fucking need right now.
You probably didn't think to do this, but did you get any footage of this? Did you like record any of the flooding in the studio?
No.
Okay.
I should have. There wouldn't have been good visuals of in the studio because like it doesn't look different.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the carpet is like soggy. And it wasn't like a swamp where it's like mushy and like water would like kick up. It was just like you'd put your hand on there like, oh yeah, it's wet. You step on it, it's like it's wet. But
damn, dude.
It's good now. But like for the last week, I had 5 fans and a dehumidifier going in my room the whole time. So I'm working what feels like inside of a fucking jet engine in that room. And I got to have the door closed because I have the dog down there. And if I don't have the door closed, the dog down, he'll wander off and he'll go look for fucking cat treats in the litter box. So it's just like, goddamn.
Yeah,
So
that sounds like a mess. Sorry I had to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is, always on the bright side. It could have been way worse. I have a sewage tank. I'm not on city sewage. So I have a whole area in my whole front yard where all of my sewage goes to. It is possible to have a backflow of all of that and all of the shit come in your house. So that didn't happen.
Okay.
So could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been like 17 times worse.
Could have been worse.
Oh my gosh.
Right? You know? So yeah, I mean, that's life. But yeah. But the other good thing was we're lucky that 2 hours after we realized this happened, and I missed my daughter's ice skating show because I had to stay home. I stayed home and whatever, and Sarah went and took a video of everything, so that was good. I got to see some of that. But 2 hours after we figured this out, we were able to get a plumber there and get the new one in, and so it could have been a longer period of time.
Sure.
And so we went to bed at night like knowing it was running and everything.
Yeah, everything was getting resolved.
Yeah,
you did it all you could.
Yeah, I did all I could. So I spent 2 hours. We have that staircase from my basement that goes up into the garage, and it's like, you know, it's like 25 stairs. It's a lot of stairs. For fun, I started keeping track of how much water I was taking out.
Yeah.
So first thing I did was I used my my wet vac, my shop vac.
Oh, nice.
And I'd suck up water, and that thing just sucks up water like son of a bitch. But I think when I picked the thing up to take it up the stairs, probably between 40 and 50 pounds. I stopped counting at 20 loads of that. And then I got most of the water off the floor, so it was down, but the sump pump hole is still water is coming up out of that because water's still coming into it. So then I just took big buckets, like 5-gallon buckets, filled both of those up, and then took those out. And I stopped counting at 40 trips of that. I was sweating like a fucking madman. I got my exercise for the goddamn month.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, Minnesota's getting a ton of rain right now. You may be even getting rain where you live as well. And there's been flooding in southern Minnesota in a lot of the places. There's a dam that failed.
Yeah.
And a house got just taken away by water.
Ceases to exist.
Yeah, that was insane. I watched that clip.
It's supposed to be worse like this in the next week or two.
Worse.
All of the, not even, we're getting more rain, but all of the water from up north is coming down the Mississippi and coming down the rivers.
Okay.
And so we're already just like, either we've got in our town and stuff, there are lakes and rivers that are so overflowed that roads are closed, highways are closed because the water's over them. That's going to get higher.
Yeah.
So I gotta build some stilts under my house.
Lift it up. I'm lucky. I had just like a few weeks ago, I just cleaned my gutters. I just installed new downspouts and extenders that would bring them away from the house, like all before this happened.
Oh,
and
nice.
So that was good. So fortunately for me, I didn't have any flooding. The only downside with the amount of rain was that I planted a couple of tomato plants, and when it rains a ton, they grow so fast that the tomatoes split open and start rotting. And so all my big tomatoes are currently inedible, and I have to kind of restart growing the little small ones again. Not like the whole plants, but like the crop that was growing I had to clip off and compost. But not flooding a house.
No.
So. Not a big deal at all.
Not that. Okay, well, enough negative shit. What are you... You fucking wrote down Lorcana on here?
I did write down Lorcana or Lorcana, whatever it is. So I love it when my significant other, and I'm sure all of you guys feel the same way, when they want to engage in a thing that's related to your interests, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, Amber, you need to play a trading card game. Like I've dabbled. I played Magic when I was little. I played a little bit of Flesh and Blood. I played a little bit of Star Wars Unlimited, and I was like, this is a thing nerd thing that you should just experience and try out. Lorcana is so similar to Magic the Gathering. It's like if Magic the Gathering is a genre of game, which basically it is at this point. That's how prolific it is. Lorcana is like Battlefield, and Magic the Gathering is like Call of Duty. Like it's there are differences, but like the flow is so similar. But she really liked it, and we like went and bought 2 starter decks that were like older ones, and so they were cheaper, and the source like had them bundled together at a discount. Did that, played 2 games. Went back the next day and bought like a heinous amount of like accessories, like sleeves and like a box to carry the cards in, and like to carry the tokens and some other dice and stuff. And we played even more. So she's really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. It's a solid game, but it's only a solid game because it rests on the shoulders of giants of a game that's developed. Yeah. So that was cool.
It's funny when that game first came out. I let's kind of online. I looked at some like the cards and stuff. I could look at a card, and I knew how the game was played.
Yeah. Even the anatomy of the cards. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, and that's not a bad thing. It's like it's not dissimilar to the miniatures board games.
Yeah.
Not so much miniature war games. That seems a little bit more.
They're more different, more varied.
More varied. There is some core things, right? You know, you're using dice and moving across the board, using movement stuff. Like there's some core things there, but like Magic is just. When there were so many at that time that all came out around that same time that did shit so fucking wrong, like they like got it, and then it's such a part of the culture that even if you're not a nerd, there's a good chance that you have enough exposure to Magic that you knew the basics of how to play, and it just makes all the shit easier.
And like it goes even beyond the mechanics of the game, even how they release products. Every company just copies Magic, and so like I'm now learning about like the culture of how these product releases work. So it's like, I didn't know this, but like there's like a thematic release that has like starter sets that come with it, and then booster packs and sets of booster packs. And the boosters are the limited edition component. And like the starter packs are kind of there forever. And so like I wanted to buy boosters for the set that we had bought. It's called Rise of the Floodborn. But like you can't find them anywhere anymore, and they're just not being made anymore. And that's how that works?
No, let me see. I got some secret internet places.
Oh shit! Okay, because I wanted to do a tiny bit of deck building with Amber, just like swap out cards in our starter decks. Because the rules for deck building are really simple, as I'm sure they are in Magic and other places.
That's the next fun part of. Let's see, Lorcana.
Are you on TCG?
Rise of the Floodborn? No.
No. He's got that special sauce. Oh,
yeah, they're sold out of Rise of the Floodborn too. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at like Target, and I was calling game stores, and I wanted to buy like one cool thing they do is in their starter sets they come with the pre-con deck, but they also come with a booster in the deck as well, which was fun. So you got the
first little hit. The first hit.
Exactly, dude. I told Amber, I was like, oh, this is awesome. You get to also experience the thing of opening a booster and looking at the cards, and we got some holographics in our boosters, and it was fucking hype. So yeah, I think she is like mid-level hooked a little bit, so we'll probably play some more.
Maybe I should get my daughter into that. Maybe because Magic is very hard to get into as a first-time player right now, especially as a kid, because there's no good entry point. All of their like intro products, starter products, they're too complex. They have too many of the advanced mechanics in them, and there's like a deck of 60 cards that's the starter deck, and they come in packs of 2, so they're meant to play against each other. But like in each of those 60 card decks, there's like 5 cards that each have a unique mechanic, but they're the only card in the whole deck that has a unique mechanic, and it's complex mechanic, and it's like I don't even know how to properly explain it to her when we're still in the learning the phases of the game parts of the game.
Dude.
It's like, fuck, why can't they had this old thing way back in the day called Portal for Magic, and that was legit pared down for anyone could learn. It took all the complexity out, but like if you played some games with that, you played 10 games with that, you'd be ready to get into the real game. And that kind of product doesn't exist anymore. So
yeah, the value of Lorcana is simply that it hasn't been around for as long.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think another thing that Magic popularized is that with each set, and I might be wrong about this, they introduce a new mechanic to the game, right?
Not
Not always?
Yeah, they do.
So the same thing they do in
Sometimes
Lorcana, but we've had sometimes two. So Lorcana's had like 3 or 4 releases, and so because it hasn't had as much time to develop, it has less stuff going on, and so that is a benefit. But truly, the only reason that I wanted to play it was because the theme was of interest to Amber, and that always helps you kind of get into a thing that you're not sure about. If it's a theme you like, then it's like, okay, fine.
Right, yeah. It's still the car you love.
Yeah.
The color of the car she loves.
Exactly.
So that's how you get to buy the car.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's it. I don't mean that in any derogatory term.
I didn't take it that way.
Okay, no. I didn't mean it in your specific case, but I don't want people to think like that I was saying anything negative about women about liking color of a car. I just mean for your partner, there's a coat of paint that they like, and that makes it entryway.
The same works for me too. Like when a thing is like vampires or like, cool fantasy, like that makes it easier for me to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, like Twilight.
Exactly. I love Twilight, dude.
Because Twilight's not about vampires, but it's about vampires, so then you watch it.
Dude, I have a story to tell you about that, but not on the podcast.
Oh gosh. All right. The next one of the things I wrote down was Father's Day gifts. So I got this shirt for Father's Day. I'm not going to talk about it. My daughter also got me 2 other things. She got me.
Wait, your daughter got you that shirt?
Yeah, she got me the fucking Wilford Brimley diabetes shirt, and she also got me. She got me Girl Scout cookie thin mint scented shampoo.
What the hell? So just mint shampoo.
It's chocolate mint. It smells.
Oh, it's chocolate mint.
Yeah, it smells delicious. The only problem as soon as you put any hair product in, now you just you smell like.
You just want to eat your hair.
You smell like frou hair gel that's mixed with thin mint cookies, and it's not a great combo.
Yeah.
And then she also got me Girl Scout cookies Samoa's body spray. It's like Axe body spray. It smells like fucking Samoa's.
The cookies would have been good enough. Oh my god, that's hilarious. You should get some cookies and like put some shampoo on, give it a spray, and eat it and see how it compares.
Yeah, I think for Adepticon this year, I'm just like not gonna shower all Adepticon. I'm just gonna spray more and more Samoa's body spray on every day. You're gonna smell.
You just smell like a pina colada more and more every single day.
Yeah, because it's like there's a sea of people. If people want to they're like, hey, I want to see John at the convention, and I'm like, I want to talk to people. I want to see you too. If you're like, oh, it's too many people, I'm not gonna be able to tell. Just use your nose. Mm-hmm. Your nose will find its way to me.
Yeah, just bloodhound your way to John.
It smells like Girl Scout cookies over here. It must be close. Yeah, so that's the other thing. You wrote down SWU.
Got a lot of acronyms in there. Yeah. So I'm still on my Star Wars kick. I don't know when it's gonna end, but Dan knows this, and so he's trying to seduce me with other card games. The one that came out by Disney called Star Wars Unlimited. I don't know if Disney made it, but they just own the property.
Unlimited.
And of course, so that's another example. I like Star Wars. I'm more willing to try the game out because it is Star Wars. And that game is a little bit different than Magic the Gathering, but there's still obvious things that are inspired by it. But instead of like playing mana, tapping all your mana, basically doing your whole turn and then handing it over to your opponent, you do an action, and then it rotates, and you do an action, and it rotates. And then when you decide you're done doing actions, you claim the priority for next turn, and then your turn is fully done, and your opponent can continue playing. So the order of play is a little bit different. But I introduced my friends to it last night. We wanted to play the 3-player version of that game, and so because Magic popularized their multiplayer format, which is called Commander, thank you. Of course, this game launched with a Commander variant, and it has rules very similar to Commander. Every single card in the deck is unique. The deck size is larger, like in Commander.
These are totally
I know.
Hey, it works.
It does, yeah.
It's about getting an easy onboarding from something that's established to something you might like.
Exactly. And so I didn't actually read those rules. I just brought several decks. I brought the 2 that I bought from the starter pack, and then Dan let me 2. And I figured, okay, we're just going to pick 3 decks and we're just going to play and it's going to be fine. And I read that and I was like, oh, shoot. Like you need other cards as well. And I was like, screw it. Let's just play with 3 decks and it's free for all, so it'll balance itself. Because like it's so clear they just copied someone and they didn't just like develop this idea on their own. And so I was like, I'm going to just play the normal game with 3 players. And it fucking totally worked, and it was an absolute riot. And everything I've heard about Commander, I experienced in this game. There was fucking backstabbing, there was politicking, there was endless screaming. It took like 2.5 fucking hours. And it came down to, if I didn't get killed with the last swing, I would have killed the final guy and I would have won. So it was like, it was the last round of everyone swinging that was important to end the game. And so, like, you know, you don't have to follow the rules of games. It has to be fun. You know, a game's job is to be fun for you. And that was so much fucking fun. Now, I am looking forward to actually playing the real version of that game. I think it's called Twin Suns or some shit. But in a pinch, that really worked. And then...
we used to do that back in the day with Magic before Commander was a thing. This is like 20, 25 years ago. Whereas, like, we'd call it Circle. This is our own term. So however many dudes are around to play. Sometimes we'd have a table of like 12 people. Right?
Oh, fuck. That would take so long. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it did. We were at the card store literally all day.
Would you wait like 30 minutes for like your turn to come up?
Yes, you would.
Oh, my God. That's
like you build decks specifically like for that version of the game, because there's cards in Magic that do stuff that read like each player or all players.
Yeah.
And those cards in a 1v1 game may not be that good, but they're great when it's like, you know, you have a card where whenever there's an enchantment that whenever an opponent draws a card, they take a damage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my God.
And then
you're just pinging everybody.
You could play, there are a good number of cards even way back in the day in Magic where it's like all players draw more cards. Mm-hmm. So then you would just be like, okay, all players draw 5 cards. Y'all took 5 damage. And just like, you just do all this stuff. But so yeah, there was different versions of those decks that work. But it made me think of, when you said Star Wars and the card game, way back when Magic was new, and there were a bunch of other games that kind of hit at the same time that were all kind of riding the same wave. There was a Star Wars game, and there was a Lord of the Rings game.
And
Fantasy
Flight?
No, this was before Fantasy Flight existed. This was like mid-90s.
Okay.
And I bought into and played both of those games.
Okay.
Both were fucking terrible. They both used this, instead of like mana and paying a resource to play your cards and stuff, they used a location system where like you'd play cards that were location. It was like Dagobah Swamp or whatever. And then like you would travel to different locations and allow you to complete objectives. And if people were on your location, that's like the only time you'd fight. So most of the game, we're just kind of like, I'm up doing side quests.
Yeah.
And you never see them. And be like, oh, come over here and fight me. Or whatever. It was just, you know, it was terrible. I got rid of all of my Star Wars cards except for I had 2 cards that were worth money. And they're still worth money. I have an ultra rare Darth Vader, which is the rarest version of Darth Vader from that game, and then the rarest version of Luke Skywalker.
Cool.
Yeah, and all the art from that game were just stills from the movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this was before even episode 1 was out.
Okay,
so
wow. Okay.
It was just 4, 5, and 6.
All right.
So it was pretty cool. But anyway,
cool.
The Lord of the Rings one was equally terrible. Even more complex. They were the reason is those games were bad. The reason so many games in that era were bad. Each card had a fucking wall of text on it, and it was so convoluted. They were just so complex. Like you couldn't. The thing with Magic is like, if you like write a 4-sentence paragraph about what this game is, you could do it with Magic. You couldn't do that with those games. It was just like.
Yeah, even the way Magic chooses to write the rules about its game, other games also copy that style. Yeah. You have this very easy to read 1-pager that really explains 90% of the rules really well. And it's because the rules of the game are very similar to Magic's rules. And then you also have this fucking gargantuan 20-page PDF that goes into the timings and the stack and all this stuff. And it's just like, okay. It's so clear that like Magic in a huge way paved the way, and they're all just like walking on this golden road, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a thing that didn't exist before like the early 90s, and so the timeline, the evolution, the how it's become what it is a pretty short time span, and the amount of things learned in that time is pretty drastic, and it's a matter of like, do you just ignore the history you have available to you for what's worked and what's not? Because Magic has had a lot of fumbles along the way, and a lot of things that didn't work, but they've, you know, recouped and, thrown stuff out or gone away from things and doubled down on other things. So it's like learn from that. Unfortunately, there's that, and you have like that and like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon are the only ones that have been around a long time. Nobody fucking plays Pokemon, so that doesn't count.
Yeah, I just bought the cards. I never played the game.
Nobody plays the game. Okay, here's a cold hard truth. The only people that play the game are little kids, and they don't use the real rules. They make it up. I know this because Drew, fucking Ginger Jesus, collects Pokemon cards and plays with his nephews, and he's like, I don't really know how to play. They know how to play, but they don't know how to play.
Yeah. Rules apply on their turn, but not on Drew's turn.
Right.
Classic.
Yeah, you just Magikarp into Gyarados. Turn 1 every game, I guess.
I just thought of an idea based on a sentence you said for a pockets. It's going to be really good, and I think we should note it right here. If James is listening, we should do a react video where we react to like GW's 10 worst ideas from like their entire company history.
I love it.
From like the 70s all the way up until now.
I love it.
Because like I feel like we wouldn't even know half of them, and we could shit all over them or whatever, or not, or praise them, whatever.
Yeah,
let's do that.
All right, James, your job is to 5-10. Yeah, see how many you can come that are like kind of easy shots.
Product ideas, business ideas, any kind of ideas.
Models, games, rules, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Okay. I've got 2 left, but I kind of lumped them together because they kind of go hand in hand. For the first time, I'm going to pull up the books here right now. I brought along the Age of Sigmar 4th edition books. 2 hardcover books come in the new box set. The core rules, and then the Fire and Jade which is the Spearhead rules, which is a hardcover book, and it's actually really nice. It's like the size of a Battle Tome. I'm excited for a game for the first time in a long time, probably since pre-COVID. So I'm excited to play. I'm excited to build a new army. I'm excited to even play with my old ones. I'm excited that there's an entry point for Spearhead. New models are always cool. It's really cool when it's like new models and they're models that aesthetic appeals to you. And the Skaven appeals to me in a different way than like Soulblight does.
So it's kind of fresh.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's not like me just trying to find a new girlfriend that has the same.
You gotta type.
Yeah, that reminds me of my old girlfriend, which is why I got into Boner Boys, because I'm like, oh, this will be just like her.
Oh my God, this analogy is so perfect. Yeah. With my requisite Love Island knowledge, this is coming together, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. So I made that mistake with Boner Boys. I made that mistake with Night Haunt. Getting back together.
So real.
Getting back together with Nagash, at the end of the day. I understand her faults.
You go back to the ex.
Yep. Yeah. I just crawled back. But this way, I get a totally different girl, right? Yeah. Skaven. She's a little bit hairier. That's fine. She got a little nubbin tail. It's fine. Love her anyway. But yeah, it's different, right? And it's chaos, and I'm the Great Horned Rat has got me deep in his clutches. So I'm excited for this game. The models are so cool. The rules, I've looked in the core book, and it's just like, oh my God, fat stacks of pages in here. But it's like you get to the part where it's game rules, and it's like 8 pages, and half of those pages are cool, like artwork too. So, but they have this, this one picture. I just fucking love this one. The Chaos Pantheon picture.
Oh yeah.
All the gods' heads, the Chaos gods'
That
heads.
is sick. Yeah.
It has some really cool art in here. But yeah, so just like flipping through this got me really excited. And then getting to the part where it's rules. Like I know Age of Sigmar enough to where it's like, yep, all of this stuff I can read a single read through. I know what's different. I know what's the same. And those little things you kind of figure out through playing, right? It doesn't feel like I have this heavy burden of like learning something from scratch.
I'm always like concerned about doing or reading rules like that for a game, because it's like the game seems so similar that I often miss the small differences.
Yeah.
Until like someone tells me like 3 months later that I've been missing them this entire time. But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, it's the obvious things like the battle shock is gone, and now they have the command, which is how many how many points you count for each model on an objective and stuff. So it's like, that's obvious, right? Because it's right on the battle scrolls. It's a pretty obvious change. But there's like minutia in like how the retreating works slightly different and how other things work slightly different that, it's like that stuff I'm going to totally fuck up. But, that's fine. That's part of the process. So in getting excited with Skaven and getting excited with figuring out what I'm going to do with Age of Sigmar 4th edition, kind of got me on this road of finding something I was excited about for a Golden Demon project.
Mm.
And so I'm not going to reveal too much yet because I just ordered some models for this for a kit bash. It's going to be a single model.
AOS, presumably?
Fantasy, yes.
Okay.
Age of Sigmar, yes. It's going to be a big model.
Mm.
So, but I gotta put my own spin on it. I'm gonna try to harness my internal Albert Moreto font on my design aesthetic, and try to come up with being a completely novice, kit basher and sculptor. I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be great. To try to pull in that part of it.
There's something about competitions that just make you want to try something new. You know?
Yeah, like no, heaven forbid you just paint a model well.
Heaven forbid you just rely on the skills you already have.
Right? If you okay, here's my thought process, especially for Golden Demon. But I think it kind of applies to other ones as well. If I just solely rely on painting the best thing, I don't think I'm going to be the best painter, right? Or I could be, but it's not going to be so worlds apart that a judge's predetermined preferences are going to pick mine. Mm-hmm. So I've got to do something else, And I also like, and this is completely ludicrous, but I stand behind it. I want to, from the get-go of deciding on a project, I want to be able to envision the best version of that project winning the Slayer Sword. Okay. I don't want, and that's just where I'm at right now. Not that I'm fighting for a Slayer Sword, think I deserve a Slayer Sword. I don't believe that at all. But I think that I got my toes wet. I've entered 3 Golden Demons now. I won one, and I'm like, okay, I want to be able to say, if I execute this at each of its very pivotal stages correctly, that I could go into the award ceremony and say, there's a chance I could walk out of here with a sword. It's probably not going to happen, but man, if you have that feeling in your stomach a little bit, gosh, God, isn't that just the greatest feeling? I want to raise that fucker so bad.
It's a double-edged sword, right?
And look at Mr. Dos Santos, his piece from this year, the reflection of the vampire upside and down, well painted, greatly painted. It didn't win because it was the best painted.
No, it was a unique and awesome idea
and well executed, idea. That's what wins. And his is not an exception. His is the rule. The exception is our buddy Gavin, who just painted a cute little skink to the umpteenth degree. Also, there wasn't something painted to a high degree that gave that wow factor in that Golden Demon that year. There just wasn't. If there was, I think that wins.
The last year with Santos?
No, the one with Gavin.
That was his thing. That was the thing painted to a high degree.
Gavin's was the.
There wasn't a bigger, more impressive thing painted to that degree. Is that what you're saying?
I would say, for example, that Ben Comet's piece that year, where it was the fight between Wakanda or
Kabunda,
Kawabunga, and then the Angel Primarch. There was the duel and this crashing through a citadel and shit. And he is the first to say, he did the thing in 2 weeks. If that thing, don't change much of it at all, but just paint it across the entire board to a level that Ben is obviously able to do, I think that wins because it's so wow. So there just wasn't something that year. And any given year, if there is something that has that crazy wow factor and painted to a high level, I think that wins. So that's what I want to do.
Rats,
baby.
Yeah. I don't know if GW really knows exactly what wins
No.
every single year.
So
they
don't know.
Trying to gaze into the tea leaves and figure it out is a dangerous game. But what I do like about it is that you're hyped on it. You're gonna make something cool, and honestly, that's the best part.
Right. Yeah. And I have a direction now, right? Because I've been kind of
waffling a little bit.
I don't know about waffling, but just haven't found my muse. I think that's a big part of it. You have to, and you know this from the projects that you've worked on, the projects that you have in your head that you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's because they excite you, and you just have to find that excitement.
Yes.
And sometimes when you push, you go out of your way to proactively find your excitement, it's the last time you're going to find it.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true. Like if you just sit down and start gazing through their catalog, like it's not really going to come to you through that. It's going to come through like a totally different experience, maybe even a gaming experience, maybe an experience like looking through the rule book and seeing a cool piece of art. Like it can come from all kinds of different places.
From somebody else's work gets spurs an idea for you.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
the last thing you should try to do is try to think about what you think will win, not what will excite you.
Yeah, 100%.
If you think about that, then you're always going to go to some form of fucking Space Marine shitty thing. And there is awesome things that have Space Marines in them. There are amazing ideas that have not been created that are that, but those things have to excite you too. I mean, I probably would be a safe bet that before I die, I'll do a Golden Demon piece that will include one or more Space Marines because that idea will excite me. One of your ideas includes a Space Marine.
I know, and I'm still excited about that.
Yeah, so you
I'm still hyped on
that. You fucking do it. Not right now, but do it.
I'm hyped on that. Last thing for me, because of
yep,
you fucking bastard. Middle sentence, this guy just fucking rips one, dude. Because Star Wars Universe hyped me on Star Wars again. I was like, okay, I should watch some Star Wars TV shows that I haven't seen yet. So I watched Book of Boba Fett, and I also watched, most importantly, this docu-series called It's called Light and Magic, and it's about ILM, the visual effects company that George Lucas created to make the original Star Wars. And it's like a 6 or 7 long show about that company exclusively. And so a decent part of it is about the making of Star Wars, because that's where the company got its start. But it also talks about like the visual effects done in Terminator 2 with the T-1000. Talks about Willow when the old witch like turns from a rabbit to an ostrich to a lion to a woman. It talks about all these revolutionary special effects that ILM created. They created the technology to do them, the hardware to do them. This company is the oldest special effects company in the business. They've been around for 1977. What is that? About 50 years or more. And like they have innovated at so many points in the game, like the Davy Jones special effects by Bill Nighy. That's ILM.
Really?
Like, all these things are ILM, and it was so cool to learn about all of that. But most importantly for our viewers, I think what would interest you guys, and also maybe you, is the fucking model effects. So obviously the original Star Wars were tons of practical effects, stop motion effects, and they created the motion control capture, like where the object in the camera is moved independently and it's programmed so you can repeat it every single time. Because basically what you do for a ship is you'd record the movement. You would record the movement with like the jet boosters on. You'd record the movement with like the galaxy in the background. And then you would layer those elements physically with film reel, not with our editor stuff that we have now. And you would take a picture of that film reel, and then all stacked together, you get your final shot. Like, so manual. You take a picture every single fucking frame, 24 frames a second. Like it was so labor intensive, but they did it, and they invented it, and it was so cool to see all those rigs and all those models and could you imagine how cool it'd be to get a job as a model kit creator for a fucking sci-fi movie?
Like in the late 70s, like how do you find a person with the experience to do that?
I know that's
they had to be model train makers or something. Right?
That's part of the story. That's part is how where do you find these people? And so like that's part of the story, and it's so the whole thing is so fucking cool. Even if you're not into Star Wars, if you're into like the making of movies and behind the scenes, I really can't recommend it enough. I finished it in 2 days. It gave me that same buzz that the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings gave me, and I immediately started watching it again. Like I was like, Amber, we need to watch this, and so then we started watching it again. It's just it's so cool. I love it so much.
Is it on a streaming service?
It's on Disney. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
All right, I'm gonna watch that. And what's the Lord of the Rings one? I don't ever think I've ever seen behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings.
If you buy the extended edition of Lord of the Rings, it comes with an incredibly extensive making of series about the whole process, and it's like it's money. It's so cool.
I have them all on Blu-ray, so I just have never watched that.
You get so many interviews. Hear about like pranks that Vigo like pulled, and like the Hobbits, and like all the sets they made, and also the model kits. They had model kits on that of like Minas Tirith. Like you've seen Zorp's videos where he shows maybe some of that behind the scenes stuff. It comes from that stuff.
Okay,
it's so cool. It's so cool.
Vigo like broke his foot or something. Bro.
Yeah, when he kicked
he kicked the helmet, and broke his foot.
Or like when he fell. When he's doing the scene where he's like floating down the river after he gets like thrown off the cliff in Two Towers, he almost drowns in that scene. Like he goes underwater and gets taken down by Riptide and like almost doesn't come back up.
Rip.
So exactly. There's a lot of things like that, a lot of behind the scenes stories, but also the making of is incredible.
You can just see Peter Jackson up on the hill. He's like, "Great acting, Vigo, great acting."
Yeah, he's like, "All right, you can come up now."
Oh, no,
fuck!
He's gone.
You're dead.
Well, we're gonna have to deviate from Tolkien's story a little bit.
Aragorn dies now. Why did Aragorn change like halfway through the movie? Man, that would have been so bad. I think that would have sunk the. I mean, it would have totally changed the way that movie went.
It's just like John Malkovich with a wig on for the rest.
Yeah, that would have worked. Yeah, 100%. Fucking John Malkovich.
Oh man. I love to think of that alternate universe
where John plays every single character of the cast, just with different wigs on.
It's just being John Malkovich, Lord of the Rings edition. All right, well there's a lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot of twists, a lot of turns in that Preamble Ramble. All right, Scotty boy, what did you paint in the last fortnight?
Not a whole lot. I have my parents just decided to like come over. Like in the middle of a week. It was kind of weird. Like they didn't stay for the weekend. They came Wednesday to like Saturday morning. So I lost a chunk there, but I've also been just editing a lot of stuff. And so really all I've painted is just what I painted on my live stream for the last 2 weeks, which is a little bit more Vader. And I have the cloak to do, and that's kind of it. I'm not so convinced about like the magenta, I don't know what it's called, the undersuit robed thing.
I think getting at least the base tone on all the things, like on the cloak and on the skirty bits and all that, like I can now for the first time really start seeing where he's going, and actually he looks better.
Awesome.
And it makes the shiny parts stand out more.
Yeah.
You need to have some parts that are not so in your face red, because otherwise you're kind of everything pulls together.
Yeah.
And I think having this darker magenta on his pants, on his sleeves, and on his gloves helps that.
Yeah.
You could even go for the gloves. You could go one of two ways, because I agree that like I don't like them being same with the sleeves.
Yeah. So originally when I painted those gloves, there's like this comic book where there are dudes that have red armor. It's a Star Wars one, and like black suits, and the black suits are starkly painted with like red highlights. And I like that idea a lot. And so I tried to do that with the gloves and the boots, and they looked so similar to the sleeves and the pants, and I was like, this is not working. And so then I glazed over that with like a different kind of red to make them a little bit more different. Mm-hmm. But it's supposed to be, the gloves, I think especially show up better than the boots do, but it's supposed to be like really high contrast. There is a highlight, but it goes to like almost like a really dark shadow in the shadowed areas. I don't think I'm really selling it. It's like, is it a thing that only looks good in comic books and not good on tiny miniatures? I don't know. Or maybe I'm just like reverting to like my skills that I have and not actually trying to do the new thing that I'm, trying to shoot for. I don't know.
I think maybe too, because the rest of the model isn't using that kind of comic book style approach, that it stands out different.
Yeah, that's possible.
That would be my inclination. And it's a really tough, because they're small details, but there's a lot of like little ripples on these gloves, so you can't do those without it being a large portion of the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's like if you're highlighting these correctly, which you did, and then it reads more like that being the midtone rather than the highlight.
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of, it's the issue of the model itself not really helping you out in that. Actually, it's kind of fighting you to pull that off.
Interesting. I don't know what to do with the stripes on his like shoulder armor. They're just black right now, and like that looks fine. I don't know if anything needs to be done with them.
I would just do a really crisp edge highlight
of like gray or something.
I don't know.
Maybe of like a gray that's mixed with red, so kind of like a pinkish, just to kind of stay with the theme a little bit.
I want to. Where my idea goes is whatever your brightest highlight is on, because I envision they're also glossy.
Oh yeah,
it's across a whole glossy thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
That like really, really light red, almost white, just edge highlight with that. So the light is just hitting them on its shink edges of that.
Yeah.
And then you can always go back in and it's like, I can pull it back with the glaze if you need to, but like go real stark at the beginning. I think that's your best bet for making them really work without fighting too much.
So kind of like a pinkish, grayish, whitish NMM that matches the highlights on the shoulders already.
Yep. Just imagine you painted this whole thing, his whole top shoulder thing, like true steel or like chrome NMM. Mm-hmm. What would those details look like for that? They would be like just pure white, because where the light hits that angle or hits that side of it, it's going to be the brightest point of highlight.
It's a very extreme angle.
Yes.
It's like almost like facing the camera.
Yep. So just imagine that, but make it red.
Sure.
That's what I would do.
So not much progress. I have the cape to do, and then I have to stick a saber on him. Then he's done.
I like that the red on the cape. One, it's a little bit more matte, and it shows. The matte kind of paint shows really well with the shine effect you did on the armor. Mm-hmm. And it's a slightly different red. It's a little bit, I don't want to say orangish red, but it's a warm red instead of a cool red. You got a bunch of cool reds going on.
Yes.
And I really like that.
Yes, that is 100% intentional. Not done yet at all. I need way more contrast in there. I actually started painting it, and like I was getting a lot of weird things happening. I was getting a ton of chunks building up in my paint. I don't know if I got like dirt in my water cup, and then like that dirt got into my paint, because I was working with like dirt a lot for the Razor Wing Jet Fighter base, and it was like super fucking messy. I don't know if like got on my palette or something, but I was having so many issues with like brush strokes and crap in my paint and stuff like that. So
I would go through with the high grit sandpaper and sand all those little bumps down now, because you're not far along. I had to do that with my Golden Demon piece last year.
Yeah,
because somehow my spitting with my airbrush.
Oh god, that's so annoying.
And I didn't realize it because it was so fine, and realized it until I was like in the midst of like painting things. I'm like, I have to go through and sand all of these models.
Ugh.
So yeah, and it worked just fine. It's really, really, really simple with like an 800 grit, and it's like, no problem.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, he's cool.
Thanks,
he's
man.
coming along well.
Thank you.
I painted a unit of clan rats. So
God damn, a whole ass unit.
Yeah, I built and based 20 because I was like, oh, we're gonna do 20. That was too many. I got through the skin. So my first step was the skin and all these, and I tried some different skin variations and some kind of go-tos that I did. About 4 or 5 of them were all like the same one that I really liked, and then tried ones that are a little bit more reddish pinkish. I've got one that's more of a purple base, and I got the kind of pestilence nurgly rat one that he looked like he would need a green undertone. So I got through the flesh on 10, and I'm like, if I do 10 more, I'll be able to finish this unit of 20 by the time to get the video done on time. But I'm going to compromise so much. I'm going to speed through things. I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to look at it and see the corners I cut. And the point of this whole army paint job is, it's not about painting an army the best I can paint models. It's about, basically, it's painting an army that I'm proud of. Painting an army that how I think anybody can approach army painting in a way that isn't so labor intensive, but it's still something to be proud of. And so there are a couple of key things in how you approach it and where you spend your time to try to pull that off. And I also take an approach on this one, probably the first time I've ever done with an army, of approaching it for what's going to look good at the table. I don't think I have it perfect, but I think that these models look better at the table than any of the other armies that I've done. So
why do you think that?
All the shadows, especially on the skin, it's a very vibrant shadow color. So it's either a screaming red, a vibrant like violet. There's different warm shades that most of them are pretty vibrant. The colors of the scheme, so there's like an ochre yellow, a more muted red, and a deep blue, are kind of interchangeable. And they all kind of go up to enough of a bright highlight and edge highlight to define the shapes at a distance, without, I really did not want them to look like on the table, they all look matchy-matchy. You've got a giant fucking army of salamanders and everything, you know it's yours because it's the bright green thing, right? And that's all you see is the bright green. So as you get in and look at them closer, you get rewarded for that. But at a distance, I wanted them to be more like look better, basically. It can be kind of tough when you have a lot of the things from like, I did a lot of weathering and stuff on the armor, and that kind of fades at the table length. But the key things of their faces and their skin, I wanted to be bright. I could have and probably should have continued that across the cloth a little bit better, because I did use more like a deep brown for the shadows there, but tried to keep that a true color present enough without being cartoony. So that was the approach.
You said you painted 2 of these in different skin tones, and I can see them. A lot of people might struggle with that idea because they don't want the unit to look disparate. You know you did that. You can see them. You can identify them. Is that going to annoy you think?
No.
Okay.
I think the goal is that there's enough variety throughout the army that the variety becomes the consistency.
Right. And so the reason I asked that question, it was almost rhetorical, because I thought you were going to say that. And this is like an important thing where like actually doing it and seeing for yourself and drawing a conclusion is really important, as opposed to thinking something and then never doing it. It's like really important to actually like try. Like people don't want to do test schemes, or like they'll strip their test models because they're afraid they're going to look too different. But like that, even if your army's thing isn't variety, I would say that's not even a concern that I would have. But in this case, it works especially well.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say, upon completing this, you could have me do another unit of 10 clan rats, and you could tell me you cannot use any specific paint that you used on these 10. I could paint another unit of 10 with completely different paints, put them side by side with these, and they would look like they belong together.
That's what I feel like for my fucking Dark Eldar as well. Like people ask me like, what paints am I using? It's like I just change it every single time I've been painting the cream thing. I don't actually know, but it doesn't matter. Like close enough is good enough.
Right. The human eye is not that good. Right? Like if you put them under high magnification, if you're in a super well lit under your 20 different hobby lights and looking at them 3 inches from your face, you'll be able to tell a difference. But will you be able to tell a difference so much to where it will look bad? No.
Mm-hmm.
When you put them together on a table with the whole army, you won't tell at all.
Yeah.
If you never told somebody, they wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing.
Exactly. I think also the important thing here is that you aren't totally changing the way you're painting the test models. You're not using a different style. You're not like changing up huge portions of the scheme. You're like iterating. It's just in small ways. And iterating on 10 tests might be like all the 10 things you might do on a single model, but that single model will look so very different than the rest. Instead, you just do one thing on each one, and they all blend together nicely.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I did in keeping it palatable, keeping it easy to grasp, and really worked for me setting the zone restriction, is I used triads for, I want to say everything, but not everything. There's a lot of little details. You just throw a contrast paint over it, and then you do a little edge highlight. But all of the skin and all of the cloth for the army colors, everything used a triad. And as long as I'm using the same the approach with a triad, I can switch the colors inside of the triad, and we'll still end up with a look that looks very similar.
It's like
right?
swap out the highlight color, swap out the shadow color, but keep the other two the same?
No, I mean, so if you look at the Pestilence guy and then look at one of the guys that are more orange, it's still 3 colors. They're 3 totally different colors, but the shadow, the way that you paint the shadow with the shadow color is a vibrant shadow. And then you build up with your mid-tone a bit, and then your edge highlights or your brightest highlights are your highlight color. As long as you do that, the 3 colors kind of don't matter, but you're doing the same process over and over again. They feel cohesive.
The style is
yes.
consistent, 100%. Did you happen to time any individual ones?
It's about 3 hours a model, maybe more.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
A lot.
They look awesome. there are so many times where you hand me a model that you've painted where I'm just like, God damn, you're a really good painter. Like, this is an amazing standard for your units, and I it's like, you can do it, and like it's so, there's so much variety, there's so much weathering. You're breaking my rules for color schemes, and it doesn't matter. Like, you're using so many colors on these models.
Yeah.
Like, but it's fine. Like, they're not so different that it matters. Like one thing that I might like have an issue with, it's like the color of the tail is like, on some of these guys, that color for that tail isn't found anywhere else on the model. But because like there are other colors that live in a warm purpley world on the model, it's fine. It doesn't need to be anywhere else. It's like married into the scheme.
Yeah, and I painted the tails the exact same on all of them because I'm like, okay, they're gonna have there are different kinds of rodents in the world, but their tails will unite them, and especially
United by tails.
United by tails, and because that color is the only place, it's my dark magenta for my Pro Acryl set is the base of that, and it is potent, and I want it to be potent, and because it's potent and it's not anywhere else in the models, the best way for me to, bring it into the fold was to make it cohesive across all the models, and so yeah. The other thing too is this army really allows me to do the kind of things that I have fun doing. If I'm going to paint a bunch of units,
hell yeah,
is I have freedom. Like, these dudes picked up like rags and crap in the city, alleyways. Like, their clothes do not look good. They're not going to all matchy perfect. Everyone's got to wear the exact same ultramarine blue everything. Like, that's not how this army functions. Their stuff is not going to be super crisp and clean. I added the kind of algae green color on the woods of the shield.
How'd you do that?
So there's a AK interactive color, just regular color. It's called algae green, but it's just like a grass green. Yeah, any kind of grass green. It's acrylic paint.
Okay.
And you just make a glaze, and you do it just like you glaze. I did the exact same process as that I did for the verdigris on the copper and the rust for the steels. You just thin it down about 4 parts water to 1 part paint. You pull it down where the direction that that water would collect, right? So towards the bottom of the shields, the bottom of the grooves of because there's nicely sculpted wood grain in these, and just follow the wood grain, make it like more go into the bigger cracks, so it's brighter there. You want it brightest in the cracks and just a fade on the raised surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the weathering that when I did the weathering step of the rust, the verdigris, and the moss, it was like a minute and a half a model. It was so fast, and the models looked so much better after that step was done as before. It's like the things I need to remind myself. It's like, is there something in there that we can really leverage more than most of us do in our painting, myself included? The things that take little time but make massive impact, like that.
Yeah.
What are those things? Was there a grand list of those things? That's a whole video in and of itself, but like, you need to collect them all or whatever. But I think there's a key to it though too. That works really, really well because the foundation that you put below it, the skin and the cloth, already look good.
Mm-hmm.
If you just slapped contrast paints on the shit,
yeah,
and then so if you slap chopped and then put rust and verdigris on top of stuff, it will still look better than it did before. But it won't look as good as if you tried to make it look crisp and clean, and then you're surgical in how you where and why you put stuff.
It's like a form of contrast, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. The paint application itself. And you mentioned that it's hard to see the weathering from the table. Not with those shields. The shields, you can see the green moss for sure. Yeah. It's really cool. I can't wait to see the entire army.
And so the whole basing scheme, I got to like starting this project on Monday, and I'm like getting all the bottles built, and I'm like, fuck. I haven't even thought about what I'm going to do for basing scheme for this army. This is the first unit of an army. This is the basing scheme that's going to have to work for this entire army.
Yeah,
I should have fucking thought about this.
Yeah.
So you know what I did? I fucking emailed my boy at Epic Basing. I'm like, bruh, I'm doing a Skaven army. I need some inspiration. You guys, like, this is what you fucking do, man. Like, can you give me some options? He gave me like 5 options. And he put down all of their bits. What were the bits that he'd use for each of these options
nice.
And stuff. And I'm like, all right. One of them got me thinking. I was like, oh, it got me thinking Mordheim City,
Okay.
right? You know, kind of a medieval city in ruin. It's not in its heyday anymore, and the rodents have infested.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a little bonus, I can use my Skaven in Mordheim.
There you go.
Because their basing already works. So,
There you go.
there's some little things on here. There's like the wooden planks. Oh, look at this dude. And he's on like this, like, looks like a pallet. So, there's the stones from the city cobble, but there's also like these wood scraps and pallets and stuff. So, it's like there'd be like wood shit everywhere, right? In the city, you know?
Wood shit.
There's just wood shit. So then there's like little boards that I like put on there on funny angles. There's individual boards. There's like parts like that there's more boards on connected to stuff nailed together. I also have some like broken bottles and vases. I've got some small piles of bones. I've got these little bits of rubble rock with little bits of like grass growing out of them. I didn't want the big grass or whatever. I didn't put tufts on them because I wasn't sure if I wanted to or not. I'm not saying they don't deserve tufts. Tiny tufts.
Dude, tufts coming up between the cobblestones?
I know, dude.
Like 5-strand, 4-strand little tufts?
Yeah, I
Woo!
know. I know. I think so. There's two things that I will say are not 100% complete on this model. One is the tufts decision. And two,
What would Andy Ward will do?
yeah, WWAW do.
You know what he would do.
Yeah, he'd have tiny little tufts. And the other thing is I didn't freehand on the banner yet. Was I'm gonna have a army symbol. You know, I think it's gonna be like 3 tendies crossed. It's gotta make a triangle.
Yeah, okay.
Freehanding tendies is not easy. They
No,
just kind
it's
of look
like blobs.
They kind of look like turds, which also works.
That works for Skaven. Yeah, it's can't clan pestilence.
Yeah, or just like a triangle of cheese.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. You have to explain something. What the fuck's going on with the bottom of these bases?
Those are magnets, bro.
But like, are they solid bases?
Those are the standard GW bases.
I know, but like, how did you fit this in there so nicely?
So it's a Kickstarter that's going on right now called Objective Control.
Oh, is this your sponsor for the video?
No,
Oh, okay,
they're
no.
not a sponsor for the video, but
Okay.
they're fucking awesome dudes, and they sent me all the magnets for this entire army. But they're like fucking paper thin stickers, and you peel off the back, and they fit to the base side on the underside. So you
What do they stick to though? It's like,
of the rim.
is it enough sticking force?
Yeah,
Okay.
they have videos on their Kickstarter of them like a 3D printed big, like, you know, the Great Unclean one, like solid resin on the base that's that fucking big. They put one of those on. It's just around the edge. Put it on. Turn it upside down.
Okay.
It works. The big thing is like when you use those regular ass magnets, one, they always fucking, they're so brittle, and whether you use green stuff, whether you use super glue, whatever thing you do to make them adhere to the bottom of a base, somehow, given enough time, a third or more of them always break off from me, and it frustrates the hell out of me. Also, they are so strong that when they adhere to a metal plate, a smaller model, you are always at risk of snapping them off at the feet because they're too potent.
Yeah.
These are like, I was like, oh man, they don't feel like there's much of a cling. Like they're barely there, but it's like I shook them or whatever. Like if you get in a car accident, you know, they're going somewhere. But and it's so much easier. And the time it took me to put stickers on the bottom of 10 bases as opposed to the whole process that it takes to put those neo rare earth magnets on the bottom of a base, so you have an army of 100 models, that's a day's work.
Yeah.
I ain't got time for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's that. They sent me some when they did an ad a month ago or so when the Kickstarter first launched, and they sent me some, and I just tried it on the models I already had. I was like, I kind of fucking love this
Yeah.
because they're flush.
I'm curious long term how it'll do.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's like the last test, right? Like
Right.
the convenience is there, everything is there. That makes sense. I've had a lot of luck with the neodymium magnets by like literally drowning them in super glue. Like I will have the bases with no model on them, but like, I'll prep them before I paint. And like the bases on the bottom of like GW things are always like segmented and stuff with like either a
They
slot.
got writing and shit.
Got writing and shot. Yeah, so I'll put the base in there and I will literally just gush super glue on top of it and then spray my accelerator, and it's like just entombed in super glue. But also I use cobalt keep ones a lot, and that like little hole for the magnet.
Oh, yeah.
I've never had one fall out of that.
Yeah, that's the way to go,
Yeah,
really.
definitely. I know what you're saying though, about like it being too strong.
The Cobalt Keep ones are also great too because just like this, I want to not worry about having forgot to do it at a certain step in the process.
Yeah.
I can always do it at any point.
Absolutely.
Here I have them squished on putty on my painting handle. They're all in their individual discs or whatever. When everything's all done, I can pop them off, put the thing on, and they're ready to go.
And nicely, the A cases that I used to travel with, which are pretty expensive, I didn't actually realize. I looked at the costs recently. They don't have a rim around the edge, and so instead of plucking the model off, I just slide it off.
Yeah.
Because I fucking have skeletons. They got fucking tiny ankles. Like, they would definitely break if I didn't do that. Actually, I have a funny story about that. I was driving to play a Necromunda game and had my case in the passenger seat next to me, and I broke too hard for one of the stop signs in North Minneapolis, and my whole case went 180 into the footwell of the passenger seat, just flipped entirely right in there. And I was like, fuck. And so I just gently put it back up, seat belted it, and then got to the place, opened my case, nothing was broken. It was totally all good. And I was like, oh God, thank God. That's I guess that one moment when it does save you to have maybe stronger magnets that might break your models.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, just seatbelt your models, I guess. And
seatbelt your models is if you've learned one thing from this episode, seatbelt your models.
Yeah, that is definitely easier though. And yeah, I'm interested if it stands the test of time. It's exciting.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. All right, on to the topic, which is supplied by one of our beautiful patrons. If you want to support the podcast, you get not only an extended episode, which is about 20 to 30 minutes longer, but you can also submit models for feedback, but you can also submit topics as well, like Eric Walton has done this episode. And he asks, what do you guys find to be the biggest barrier in the hobby for yourselves at an experience level? What slows you down, saps your motivation, etc.? How do you overcome those barriers? And you wanted to reframe that.
Yeah, I think there's an extra little kind of addition or sidetrack to take to this question, because I think it's a great question, Eric. And we immediately were like, yeah, this is a really cool topic. And that is, I want to also frame it. We'll answer that question, but also under the framing of the differences in those barriers and roadblocks from a beginner to when you're more experienced. Because I think those things evolve, and you being aware and understanding those is part of the change you need to be prepared for. Because the kinds of things that really got me when I was newer and just always just trying to learn, I kept that same mindset as I got more advanced. And there's a point where it doesn't help you anymore. You need to be thinking about it in a different way. And so I think kind of showing those will kind of help people as they go through that journey. Or maybe they still have a beginner mindset to hurdles, and part of the hurdle is that mindset. And so we can kind of jump on it from there. Did you have a jumping off point, or do you want me to go?
No, I can go. Yeah, sure. We could start with the hurdles of a beginner. And I remember some of them when I was little. One of them was cost.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I was little, like when I was 13 or 14, and I wanted to play Warhammer, I couldn't afford anything. And the way I was able to afford things is by mowing lawns. And I don't know if that's really an answer to anyone, but like the hobby is expensive. A lot of things are costly in it. And a great way to like get into the hobby without spending oodles of money are small things like buying synthetic brushes instead of Kolinsky brushes, 3D printing models, getting your buddy who has a printer to print you models for free, buying Reaper Bones models that cost $3 to $5 a pop. Honestly, you found that one random ass set of paints at Home Depot that was like shockingly good. Like some cheap paint really can do well. It doesn't need to be super expensive, or buying singles of paint at a time. I think I did a video a long time ago where it was like I spent $11, literally $11, and I didn't use anything I owned previously. And that was enough to have paints, a model, and a paintbrush, a hard palette, a cup of water, paper roll, and I could like get into the hobby. So there are cheap ways to get into the hobby if cost is an issue for you, a barrier.
Yeah, I remember way back, this is probably 96, 97. I went to a store with my buddy Blair, and we were going to get models for Dungeons and Dragons. And we ended up pooling our money, and what we could afford was we saw the Warhammer models, and we were like, oh man, these are so much better. So by pooling our money, we could buy one box of Fantasy Orcs and one rattle can of Chaos Black. Even back then, in like fucking 97, a rattle can of Chaos Black was like $11, and we were like, we can't buy. We never fucking painted them. We rattle canned them.
Use the primer for like house projects.
We used the primer for that one unit of whatever 20 orcs that were in there, and we used those fucking primed black orcs for D&D for like 10 years. We never painted them. But yeah, like that. I think cost. There's another aspect to cost too that gets into the hobby side. One is like, yeah, it's never a better time. Yes, inflation, everything's more expensive, but there's never more options, and with more options are cheaper options. So if you want to paint models, you can do so on a budget now more than ever.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not really restricted by going to like an art store and buying the stuff that they had, which was more expensive to get your feet wet, plus just online commerce, your ability to get cheap shit on Amazon and stuff. Like you can do that. Get cheap, big bucket of cheap brushes.
More options.
Get the Sam Lens special bucket brushes. Those golden Taclons, baby.
Oh yeah.
But the other part about that goes with the cost is the barrier that it ends up putting in front of yourself from actually painting, because you're worried, because you see all the cost and you see how little that you can afford, and you don't want to screw it up.
Oh sure, yeah, the fear of ruining your model.
Yeah, and that's a legit thing that I think it sticks with us longer than it needs to, because it's something that's so ingrained to us from our earliest days of the hobby. Because we're so worried about like, oh, I got this one dude, this one hero, he's gonna be so awesome, but he's $20, and I want to make sure I'm good enough. You know, there's always the fear of I want to wait till I'm good enough, means that you don't paint the fun thing. You'll never run out of models. You'll get to a point where the cost is no longer your prohibitive aspect of your hobby. It doesn't mean you could buy infinite models, but it means that you won't run out of models. You'll quickly learn that running out of models is the least of your worries. And so you get beyond that. That's a pretty big hurdle of like, don't want to ruin the model. Comparing that to now, I'm not worried about ruining a model. I know from having painted long enough and getting experience that we have now, that I will always continue to grow. You've seen your growth over the years. You know that you're better. You know, this month I like to think I'm better than last month. Is that true? Not necessarily, but it's a good mindset to have, that I'm always growing. If you feel like you're always growing, that there will never be a perfect time, because growth will continue to happen. So you might as well paint the model that excites you now. And when you get to an experience level, that kind of, you need to come to the mindset that you need to shed that. You may hold on to it. And sometimes I'll even look back to models. I remember I have this corn model, Slaughter Priest. He's one of the, like when Age of Sigmar first came out, he was the most badass dude. He's got the fucking helmet, and he's kind of hunched, and he's got a sword and a ball and chain like this. I still have that model in gray plastic unbuilt, because I wanted to wait till I was good enough, because I fucking loved that model. I've never painted him. So there are specific models that hold on to that for you. And
Still have, you could paint it now, right?
I could, but I'm just like, no, I better paint something else. It's not because like, oh, I really want to paint it to like a golden demon level. I don't even think that. It's just, it's a subconscious thing.
Really?
Yeah. There are a couple models that are that way. That way it sticks out to in my head.
Wow.
So much.
Okay.
So there are models that will last with you until you consciously say, this is not something I worry about anymore. And the best way to do that is to paint the model that makes you think that. Okay. So that's probably a video I need to do. I need to paint that dude.
Maybe, yeah. It's such a hard thing to try to talk to someone who has that train of thought about. Because, like, obviously you can, like, offer up, like, whatever wisdom you have. Like, because, like, we all know that, like, to improve, you must paint. To improve faster, you have to challenge yourself and do things you're uncomfortable with. And that's difficult, but it's necessary. And it's like, it's just saying that to a person often isn't enough to have them be like, okay, now go paint that thing that I had to paint before, you know?
Right.
It's like you didn't just solve the problem for them. Like when I was painting, I did not give a fuck about that. That's not what I was thinking about. I was just painting because it was fun. Mm-hmm. And like, if I could somehow like teleport that experience to you, or encourage you to try to have that experience, that's the best way. It's like, we're doing this because it's fun. It's enjoyable. The whole part, you know, most of it should be enjoyable. The painting as well. And like by the end of it, you will likely have something you're proud of. And like, it's really difficult to like compare outcomes to people who've been in the hobby for a lot longer. That's not fair on you. I want to say something that's concrete and that's going to make something click in people's brains, but like I have nothing. I come up short.
Yeah. I think there is no thing to say. I think the closest we can get to is to just keep painting.
Yeah.
If you just keep painting, it kind of solves 80% of the stress and worry.
Yeah.
It just the action will let you realize the things are not big things to worry about.
Right.
And the progress, the improvement just happens organically because you're enjoying doing it. I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from my time in doing it. Now, another thing that I think it's a hurdle for new painters, and then how it's changed as I become more experienced, is when you're new, first of all, a great percentage of painted models that you'll see, either in person or specifically online these days, will look amazing. They look better than things you can do. And that's probably true. So you look at these models and you get overwhelmed because you haven't figured out how to see the matrix yet and to see, looking at a finished model, how they got there. So your hurdle is that you don't have a roadmap. You don't know what techniques they used. You don't know how they applied the paint, how many coats of paint, how many colors, whatever. So what do we end up doing as new painters? We ask the questions that are the wrong questions, but are the obvious questions that we think will give us the answer. What paint did you use? What brush did you use? What palette do you use? What thinning medium do you use? Those are not the solution, but they're a concrete thing, right? If I use the thing will allow my mini that doesn't look as good as that mini to look more like that mini. So you look at something and you can't really diagnose it. You can't diagnose how they got there. You can't look at the model and see, you're not looking at it through the lens of light and color. You just know that it looks good, but you can't really put into words why it looks good or try to decipher how it got there, right? Mm-hmm. So early on, that's your hurdle, and you're kind of like, ugh. As you go along, you start to be able to determine those things through learning, through watching videos, through experimenting yourself, through trying to glaze in shadows, through trying NMM, through figuring out wet blending, to figuring out how bright you need to go on a model, what colors work well with other colors, all these things that are the things that really matter, not what paint you used. You get those through experience and time. And you get to a point when you're experienced where you can see those things. I can look at a paint job of David Colwell, and I can tell you, now that I've done a little research, I've talked to Dave, I've seen the stuff, and he inserted a lot of other people here, Eric Swinson or anybody like that are the world's best painters. I can look at their paint jobs and I can tell you how they did it with 80% certainty. So I know how they did it. I don't know that I can replicate it, or I don't know when I sit there with paint on my brush that I'll feel confident of the X steps I need to take. As long as I take those X steps, mine will look like Dave's. I don't have that. So I sit down and I'm like, I have to have the fortitude and mental energy and like emotional stableness right now to go in knowing I think I know how I got there. I just got to go in and try to do it myself. And that is a commitment.
Sure.
It's a time commitment. It is a inevitable frustration commitment. It is you trying to see the great things and make your own great things. It's a heavier lift.
Right. So when you get to this kind of more awkward teenager phase of I can identify the things that are cool and I don't know how to do them, you have to just get into that research and development phase, You have to poke at it. You have to try things and then note, did that work? Did it not work? What part of it did I like? What part of it did I not like? And you need to leave behind the things you didn't like and then go forward with things you did like. And you have to just do that. And you have to just iterate constantly. And eventually you'll figure out things that are working for you and things that aren't working for you. But again, it's one of those things. It's kind of a painful experience. You can see the end result and you can't accomplish it. You're not exactly sure why, but I don't know. For me, there's so much confidence building that goes on in failing in a strange way. I don't know why this is, but I love to be able to speak from experience and not just like say something else that someone else said.
Right.
And so every time you fail, it's like a lesson you learned. It's wisdom you gained as an artist that you can now take and move forward with and feel confident about your choices because you tried a thing and this was the outcome for you in your environment, with your tools, with your materials. That is solid ground to stand on top of. And so it feels like an achievement whenever I fail. It's like, I did a thing. I know it to be true for me. And so I'm going to continue with that same set of things and leave that one thing behind. And like that like slow confidence building then builds up to you being able to blend, being able to glaze, all that stuff, because you built it up with your own knowledge and also with the help of YouTube videos and online resources. But that is like a Kickstarter, right? That isn't like the foundation. Like, right. You need to develop skills on top of the knowledge you learn from other resources.
Right. Yeah, I think to give an example of that, because one came to my brain, is something that like I even need to remind myself sometimes. So we talk about glazing, so using really thin paint. And glazing works really, really well for shadows. It works well for dark colors, so you can get in there and get some shadows. You can define a shape by going with the curve of the model towards the downward facing surfaces, where one surface meets another. The big thing with miniatures is defining shapes both through dark areas and through bright areas. And we're dealing with small things, so we need to over-exaggerate those things. But for the bright areas, I'm like, well, the glazing worked well when I used this Rhinox hide in the shadows. I'm going to do the same thing with this ivory in the highlights. Try glazing with ivory or another really bright color and let me know what happens. It's fucking terrible. It doesn't work. It breaks down poorly. It's splotchy. It's grainy. It's not smooth. It doesn't work. Well, gosh, it worked on this thing. It's not working here. And by experimenting with that, by hearing people tell you about that on YouTube videos, by getting your hands dirty, you will realize certain things that maybe aren't obvious because they're dealing with like chemistry of how paint works, which is a lot of these aha moments come from, is learning how to best use your tools for the best situations. But if I just like slap a line of pure unthinned ivory up here, it's going to look like garbage. Yeah, it does look like garbage at first, but you have to go through that to get that bright, vibrant color to then be able to pull it back down later. And so it's like every step of the way does not need to be perfectly smooth for you to end up with a perfectly smooth surface if that's what you're going for. It's the learning process of how a technique like glazing, learning, it's not a universal, works all the time in all situations with all paints. And that's kind of an example of everything in this hobby.
Yeah. And even in a different way, John just told you a thing. He said that glazing does not work with light colors, and I agree to a large extent. Whenever you hear anyone tell you a thing, though, there is still a ton of value in you going out and experimenting on your own, because you might try to glaze with ivory, and you're like, you know what? It didn't work for highlighting, but what it did do was it made my thing look dusty. And it's like, oh, now I can use this to make dust or whatever. So in experimenting, you might come to a different conclusion. You might be like, actually, you know what? I like that look for a highlight, because you're different. You have different opinions, and you'll continue to do that. Or you might agree with the findings. It's really important to like really substantiate the things you think are true in the hobby. And that was one of my barriers when I was like in that mid-growth area. I'd taken all this knowledge from people as granted, and then I started to mess around a little bit. Like a small thing was like someone told me what I should be using to thin my airbrush paints, and I was like, okay, sure. This person knows what they're talking about. I'm just going to do it. And then I like used a pre-made Vallejo one, and it was fucking night and day. And I was like, oh my God, like it's worth, just checking every now and then. People might give you advice that's just totally wrong, that's a little bit wrong, or it's just like a perspective thing. And so it's really worth just trying things out and seeing what happens.
Yeah. There are so many variables.
So many. Yes. So many. Yeah.
So you assuming you will get the same outcome as a person that tells you a thing is also assuming that every one of the variables involved is also the same.
Yeah, which is why it's funny when people ask you what paints you use, what the materials you use. It's because like that's like asking a carpenter like, what did you use a table saw? Did you use a jigsaw? Did you use hard maple? It's like that's not gonna get you the cupboard, bro. Like the creating of the thing is the hard part. That is the artistry, not necessarily the materials. So yeah, that's kind of a funny question.
Right. Yeah.
Let's get more specific, though.
Okay.
Let's talk about a technique, right? When you wanted to learn wet blending, like what was the barrier to that, and like how did you overcome that? Can you remember that, or whatever technique you want to talk about? One brush blending, I know, was a thing that you were really focusing on because of Ben comments early on in your career. So how did you bust past the barrier of getting to learn that specific technique?
I think for both of those, it was watching somebody do it, and just from my basic eyes, seeing that the outcome was great. I think there's a big value in, like, I don't even know how to approach this. Having someone basically show it to you, I know that the outcome potential is there. That's a big thing. That's a big thing. I'm always, like, in the back of my brain in every aspect of life is, like, not knowing if what I'm doing has the potential to be what I want it to do.
Yeah, what's the value?
Yeah, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because if it's not, I'm not. Why am I even wasting my time, effort, and energy to do that? And so it's a big part of that in miniature painting. Is like, you don't want to go whole hog down this water slide, knowing that it just goes into a fucking pile of shit. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to go down the water slide that goes into a big kiddie pool of Mountain Dew. That's what I want. That's what I want to ride. And so, getting some reassurance, right? So for like loaded brush, or it was watching the magnificent work that Ben did on the Painting Buddha videos. For wet blending, it was taking Sam Lenz's class up here and seeing sitting over Sam's shoulder 3 inches from his ear and watching him perform magic in 10 seconds in front of me. And I'm like, fuck yeah, that is possible. If you know it's possible, you kind of shed the fear or the trepidation, and to just do it. And then you realize that even though you're like, wow, he did it in 10 seconds and it was fucking amazing. And I sit down and I try it and it is not amazing. And it is a hot mess. And I realize that there's some other magic there that's beyond the just, here's a nail, here's a hammer, smack it in the wall. I do it the same as anybody else by and large, right? There is an artistry there that comes with experience and learning and feel. The longer that I've spent time in miniature painting, especially in writing videos, the harder time I have to describe that next step up, because so much of it is based on feel. And how do I describe the feel when I don't even know what it is? I just know it when it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. And so, but if I know that it's possible as a beginner, I know that it's possible, then I need to then say, I tried it once, just in Sam's class, and it didn't look good, but I know it's possible. Am I willing to put in the reps?
Yeah, the efforts are not going to be in vain if you choose to go down that route.
Yes.
Which is important. So let me try to explain how you describe the feel, just through my own personal experience, which might not work for you. So because I would want to make videos about things like wet blending, I actually learned about wet blending in the process of trying to write a script about it. Because it's that thing where, like, when you teach something, you understand it better. And so, like, I remember having these little tiny squares of styrene, and I was wet blending on them. And one of my first attempts was I used a lot of paint. And in trying to blend the two colors together, I was scraping paint off of the styrene instead of getting a blend. And so there were like peaks and valleys where like my brush would go through and it would reveal more of the white styrene below, or the gray styrene, but where the paint was still thick and, fine, it was totally opaque. And I was like, okay, so clearly there's some element of wet blending where you shouldn't put so much paint on the model to the point where you're moving it around like a lot. Like a thin layer is good, so that you have a consistent like blend, a consistent coverage across whatever your undercoat is. Okay, that's a thing. Okay, now I'm gonna try wet blending with metallic paints. I'm gonna try wet blending with paint that is thinned. I'm gonna try wet blending with paint that is not thinned. I'm gonna try all these things, and then I'm gonna say, okay, I've been painting on pieces of styrene for this video, just so that like the visuals are easier. What if I take these things that I'm thinking are true and then apply it to, say, a model's shield, something that's similar to the styrene? Okay, what about a model's cape? Okay, what about a model's gauntlet? Like you get further and further and further and further away from your test thing, and then details start to change about what's important and like how you move your brush. And so like I don't know, if you go through it in this very like mathematical or engineering process, you begin to see little tiny details about what is different and how the feel changes in between those things. So this is kind of a random idea, but what if you go into learning a task, being given the job of trying to teach someone else it? How would you effectively do that? You have to figure out everything about it. So maybe approach it from a more of a research angle. I don't know if that helps everyone, but it certainly helped me.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. There's the variables, and then you have to kind of account for identifying those variables too, because oftentimes you don't realize that there's a variable there, and how much moisture is on your brush when you attempt to blend them.
Yes.
How much paint is on each side of those two different colors as you get there. How much pressure are you applying with your brush? What's the direction and motion?
Yes. Are you traveling up and down the divide of paints? Are you moving into one? Are you moving into the other? Is there paint still in A as you move into B, or is it a clean brush? Like, there so many things can change, and part of that process is being proactive.
Yeah.
But then on a fucking shirt, bro. Like, you have to be turned on to what you have to be horny. No, you have to be like aware of what is happening and thinking about how all these little things are affecting it, but just change one element at a time and see how it affects the outcome.
Yeah. And that especially, tying this back into things as a new painter that are roadblocks or hurdles, the stuff we just talked about is fucking overwhelming.
Is it? Okay. It's exciting.
Lot.
It's exciting for me.
It's exciting because you see, to me, it's the excitement comes from the potential in seeing Sam Lenz perform that beautifully.
Okay.
That's my excitement, right? And I need to hold on to that excitement as I then deep dive into all the stuff that we just talked about here that can just be overwhelming, and my brain is full, and I don't know how to keep all these things in the front of my brain at the same time while I've got a paintbrush and a model, whatever. So I try to touch one thing at a time. Okay. Yes. I swish the brush. If the two colors, there's a line of two colors and they're touching. If I swish the brush in a zigzag motion up and down, kind of perpendicular where they meet, that doesn't work as well as if I go parallel to where they meet and then dip into one color in parallel and then go back up into the other color, then I get a better blend. Okay, I've learned that. Now I realize this one was a lot more splotchy where the colors met. It was not fully opaque anymore. Oh, I had too much water on my brush when I did that. So that's diluting the paint and it's making it go all over the place instead of staying the full opaque color that I want. Okay, that's another detail. And it's like,
use a smaller brush.
Use
a bigger brush.
Right.
Use a brush that's frayed and not sharp.
Yeah, use a separate brush that you do, then you put the paints on. Like, all these things will help you get you closer. And each of those, small, victories by learning something will stay with you, even if you don't remember every single one of them in your head all the time. We do not remember all the little aha moments.
Now it's intrinsic. It's just natural.
Yep. It's just, it's going to happen. It's going to be good. So,
and that's an exciting thing. And so I appreciate you mentioning that hearing what I just said was overwhelming, because that's how it's such an important thing about humanity, is that everyone's different. That process for me is extremely exciting. Like, the process of discovery and learning those kind of base level things really hypes me. So like when I was doing game design, there was so much shit just right on the surface to learn, and it was so easy to pick it all up because people had already figured it out for me, right?
Yeah.
But when you get later on, then it becomes more difficult. But yeah, that stuff really hypes me. But that doesn't hype everyone. That could just overwhelm you. And I don't have an answer for you. You're fucked.
Well, I don't do it that way.
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm fine.
You turned out fine, right?
Look, I turned out fine. I think that there's the following the muse and the excitement and the artistry and not overthinking is the part that that's the wave that I ride. And it's not necessarily a better wave. It's just what works for me.
Absolutely.
And then trying to do the things, especially as a new painter, trying to do the things the way someone else tells you to do them is not necessarily right for you. Just like all learning in a classroom a certain way is not right is the same for every student. So part of this as a new painter, you don't know which way you learn best. As you get more experienced, you've put in the hours, you've put in the time has passed, you've put in the amount of models. Whether you know it or not, you have found a way that you learn best. Identifying what that is really valuable, because then you can cut out some of the fat of that's That's not as important to me, but this part that they talked about is important to me. Now I can go and try to replicate, or I can try to execute. So at the beginning, you're overwhelmed by all the steps and the trying a new thing. As you get more advanced, just because you understand it and you're able to execute doesn't mean when you do it, it looks as good as painters you look up to. Mm-hmm. So I think what you need to then do more as you become more advanced is you need to become a on-the-spot problem solver. This doesn't look as good as I want it to do, as I want it to be. What do I do now? How do I make it look better? What tools do I have in my toolbox that allow this to go from a 5 out of a 10 to a 7 out of a 10? How do I do that? So it's more active thinking in problem solving to get there. And with that comes more time. So tying this into a hurdle from a more advanced perspective is like, I often feel like I've put a weight on myself, an expectation on myself of what my miniatures look like at a bare minimum level. And I can often struggle sitting down and not painting to a certain standard that I've set for myself. And because of that, I feel like maybe I don't paint as much as I could. Maybe I don't paint as many models, get more models done to a lower level because I just enjoyed using them for a game, or I just shedding all of this proactive thinking and just slapping some paint around. And that's a mental hurdle, I think. The more experience you get, the more like weight you put on yourself and the expectations. And now the other painters or the other gamers in my league look at me as the best painter, or a good painter. And now if I show them something new, it's got to reach this caliber. Or now it is the expectation that I keep getting better. And that's a big weight. And you don't necessarily have to get better. You don't have to do it, or you don't have to do it this month, or you don't have to do it this year, or you may never have to do it. If you find the fun, you will get better, but stop making it the goal, right? You get to a certain point of experience where I think you need to shed I'm continuing to try to improve because you make such big strides early on. Mm-hmm. In your first 50 models, to get as much improvement that you've gotten in your first 50 models, you might need another 150. Yeah. And after that 150, you're going to need 550. Like it's the growth becomes slower. And so not only holding yourself to a certain standard, but like being able to, get yourself comfortable and be in it for the long haul for what it's going to mean for the next improvements.
Yeah. But the silver lining in that story is that I find the better I get at painting and the better I get at problem solving, the higher my confidence goes to do whatever the fuck I want.
Yes.
Because I know I could splatter a model with random ass paint, and I know that I could make that look good in 2 hours, in 3 hours. If you give me that chunk of time, I can take a lot of problems and make them okay. Work with them, hide them, whatever it may be. And so when you get to a certain ability with your problem solving in miniature painting, you have confidence to experiment because if I fuck something up, I'm going to be able to fix it. It's not a big deal. So there is that nice positive feedback loop that does occur. So you do improve much more slowly, and your problems become much more personalized and about what you're trying to do and stuff like that, and more nuanced. But you're able to experiment and solve things much more quickly.
I get that a lot from people that ask for feedback, especially at conventions and stuff, when they ask me to look at their models and that they've put in competitions and stuff like that. It's the further you get in the experience train, you're exactly right. The more and more personal it becomes. Mm-hmm. It becomes this specific thing is something I think you can improve on, but I don't know your full history to know the best way to share it with you, how to cross that hurdle, because it's very personal at that point. And sometimes you need to ask a bunch of leading questions, and sometimes you don't have an hour and a half to get into that with somebody to really go with that. But the further you go along, you're right. It's smaller things, but they can make a massive impact. And it's how you approach, what's your painting style like? How do you approach, your painting? What techniques do you use that you're really prolific with, that you will be able to utilize better to accomplish this? Which things are completely new and you're gonna have to open a new book and try to add this into your repertoire, that kind of thing. That is really, really personal. At the more new you are to the hobby, the more I can just throw a whole bunch of shit at you. The more you can just, you can just eat everything that comes across the table because you're just starving. You know, eat it all. It's all good.
You need a foundation. You need somewhere to start.
Yep. But at a certain point, then you get a little bit picky on what you should be eating, and then I only eat tendies. That's it. That's all I'm eating. It's my diet is tendies. So that's
You shared a personal barrier I'd like to show in as well. I think mine is stagnation. I feel like when I was getting started, I was like collecting techniques like they were fucking Pokemon, you know? I was like, okay, now I'm gonna try out NMM, and now I'm gonna try out glazing, and I'm gonna try all this shit. And I just don't care. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff. And there are things left for me to learn. Like, I haven't really give hard cast shadows a try. I haven't really given super reflective sky earth NMM a try. I haven't really given OSL a try. I've like dabbled, but I've never really sat down and did that process that I just said earlier about wet blending with OSL and really thought about all of the details and what can affect it and all that stuff. But like, I just don't care to. Like, all I want to do now at my point is simply do things that are fun. And so whether that's painting models for games, whether that's painting a display model that is an awesome subject that I like, the point of the painting is not to learn a thing really anymore. There's always small things you learn. It's just to enjoy the painting. That's all it is.
That's a really good note for a more experienced painter. It's not about specific technique learning anymore. It's about executing to whatever level you're trying to at a certain time, and those improvements will come.
Sure.
So you can, it's still being proactive, but it's being proactive in a different way, right? It's not being proactive about really focusing on getting the handle for NMM. It is really focusing on what is the scene, what is the mood, what are the things I'm just overall, how do I want this piece to look and feel by the time it's done? And I'll go into the subconscious of which techniques I know that will achieve that. And that ties into one thing that I think is a really big thing. And it's something that I'm, knee deep in figuring out myself right now. When you're new, you are trying to get the grasp on the basics, the foundation, the understanding of painting a model. When you get higher up, it's no longer about painting a model. It's about how can I represent and replicate light and color. It is no longer about making the model look good because you've learned that. It's about how does the light work in this situation? How do I make it look like the sun is setting on the horizon? How does the ambient light from around the situation affect it? What color scheme really works cohesive with this? How do I make it look like her skin is being hit by that purpley, pinky setting sun while still showing that, still feeling like it's a human skin? How do I, what would light and shadows do based on the strength of this light, the angle of the light, the intensity of the light? What color would work best for her cloak, and how would that color really work well to frame her face if the hood is up, and it will draw you to her? And how does that color accentuate without overpowering the brightness of the plate chest piece that she's wearing? And then back to that setting sun, the part of her chest piece that's hitting that setting sun, what about the other side of that chest piece that's not directly in that sun? Where would that highlight? What would that highlight? What color would that highlight? Now you see, it's not about painting a model. It's about painting. It's about replicating reality. It just happens to be in a small thing. And that is fucking daunting. And when you say like, well, painting these unit of Warhammer, that the stuff I just described, that doesn't apply to these. I think it does, but it applies in a much less overpowering manner.
Yeah, it's like 20% of like the goal, not like maybe 80% of it if you're painting like a more hardcore display model.
Right. Yeah. And these are probably a prime example of more trying to paint a model really well. But there are certain aspects of that went into the kind of subconscious ways that where I placed what highlights, what did I choose for a shadow color, a midtone, and a highlight, and why? How did I, knowing with how those things work, because every one of those highlights on those skin is extremely bright. How do I not, if I blew that out, is that a terrible thing? How do I fix that if I blew it out? Is it important that I blow it out first because I need that bright light to really sell how intense and eye-catching this is? And that goes back to using color and light to sell what you want, to draw the eye where you want it, to make the impact where you want it, and let other things fade away to really make the biggest impact on your model. And so you can do that for painting an army. You can do that all the way up to display painting a bust for competition. And it's a gradation, but I still think when you get to a certain experience level, the questions that you're asking, the hurdles that you have, the roadblocks you need to get over are now in more artistic meaning rather than tangible miniature painting techniques and processes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that nuance that shows up. Like all those questions you just asked about that, like maybe like a bust character who's wearing a hood and has armor and has a visible face and it's sunsetting. Like those are all like really small things, and it'd be daunting to try to think about all of them on one paint job. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just something you approach each thing as you arrive at it. It's okay. I'm painting the cloak now. Now I'm going to think about what color is appropriate for the rest of the scheme that I picked, and also for the composition. Maybe you just do it one at a time. But that's all. Those are like really nuanced things that you kind of figure out when you've made choices that are bad and they aren't working on the model.
Yeah.
But one thing about like the being stagnant and like not experimenting or trying to figure out what those questions are. Is really breaking out of like your pattern. And so one thing, when I went and visited Roman, I got to learn how he paints models, how like what style he's developed that's comfortable for him. And because we learn in different places and our different ages and approach the hobby differently, of course he's going to have a different approach. And so he's going to have different things. And so I think those kinds of moments, I think teaching in classes, I think private coaching, I think online coaching, if you're really serious about improving, are really important because they give you someone else's perspective. Like John and my perspective are different. We're going to approach the hobby slightly differently. And to like hear someone else's ideas and questions they ask, like you just asked about that model, are really important because then you get to ask yourself the question, are these things important to me? If I fuck with some of those things, do they make an impact in such a way that I think is important and I think is a worthwhile question? And so like you get to experience someone else's worldview and then see what things you want to bring along with. But you'll never know those things unless you like, spend time to actually hear it in a video, hear it in a private coaching, hear it in an actual teaching, like with a class. So those are helpful things that expand your tool set in a way, your worldview of the hobby.
Mm. Yeah, and the example that I gave is kind of over dramatic on purpose.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a very complex kind of over the top scene, but not outlandish.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
But if you were to look at pretty much every, golden demon piece, even that got like commended or whatever, anything that did solid at any competition, not just golden demon, but any competition, and you approach it, or I stood by the display case with you, and you'd be surprised. I could show you and tell you, even in a much more subtle way, how they were going about and dealing with those things. Whether they realized they were or not, that's what they were working with, was light and color. And it's what really pushes you when you get to a certain experience level is to spending more time really understanding those. And they are really highfalutin. They're actually, if you're don't have a background in art, they're really removed from miniature painting.
Yeah,
they are. And so that's a roadblock where, like, I did a lot of art classes like in high school and some in college and stuff, and I was always very interested in it, but I don't have a strong color background. I don't have a background in a strong lighting background and stuff too. Like most of all my art stuff was compositional stuff in architecture classes. Being able to design a fucking building does not help me paint my miniature to look cooler. I could maybe design a cool cityscape for Mordheim board or something, but that's different. And so it's overwhelming, and it's oftentimes that's why I have a wonderful collection of fucking like busts and 75 millimeter models that are the most daunting for me because there's a lot more questions in those things.
Yeah. I think one of the last hurdles that I can think of is that a lot of people are going to tell you how to do the hobby, how to paint models, what to paint, and stuff like that. And when you're getting started, that's really helpful. It's really helpful. But at a certain point, you need to make this hobby what it is for you. You need to approach it in a way that's fun and exhilarating and exciting for you. If that's getting fucking nitty and gritty with light and with color and with schemes, you need to fucking go for it. If it's army painting, go for it. If it's conversion, go for it. If it's like making narrative battle scenes, go for it. This is supposed to be fun, and learning can be fun, and for others it's hard and it's intimidating. And so you need to understand that. You need to be honest with yourself, and you need to approach the hobby in a way that's going to be sustainable for you in the long term. Because if you don't, and you just do what you're supposed to do, I mean, that's just me in college, man. You know, at a certain point in the semester, I just didn't give a fuck, and I stopped reading the textbook, and I just winged my homework because I didn't care about the way they wanted to teach me. So you need to learn in the way that's best for you, enjoy it in the way that's best for you.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. We could have said this entire episode. Because if you don't do that, you don't sit down on the painting desk with regularity.
100%.
And if you don't sit down on the painting desk with regularity, nothing else matters.
Where are you going? You're going fucking nowhere. What's that movie?
You're going nowhere. Wet Hot American Summer.
It's Boondock Saints when they first discover the guy's corpse in the alleyway, and he's like shouting at the corpse. He's like, "Where are you going?"
Yeah. Oh, another one of those. I won't say another one, but that's one of those cult classic movies that I was never really loved.
No, you didn't like it. You didn't like it at all.
I didn't dislike it, but I didn't think it was worth all the hype. Granted, I watched it like in the peak of its cult classic hype. And I also was like cult classic hype of like Big Lebowski. And I'm like, oh man, Lebowski's such a much better movie than this. So I also Donnie Darko. What the fuck is Donnie Darko?
Donnie Darko it's a movie. All right. It's a movie.
All right. I had one more quick thing. One final thing that I think is important to state, at a certain point in your painting journey, when you're going from beginner to more advanced, you are going to transition away from painting like someone else, painting like the box art, painting like someone you look up to, painting like a style that you really enjoy, to you look at a gray model and you're going to put your stamp on it. You're going to approach it in a certain way. You're going to think of that cool lighting scene. You're going to think of that awesome, this gritty, grimdark universe on a gaming base. You're going to try to do something that is not replicating something else. It may be inspired by, you're definitely always going to be taking from things you've learned along the way. But somewhere as you get more experienced, you are going to break free of just copycatting. And I think just copycatting is a very vital and important thing, because you don't discover your own style. You don't discover pulling a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of so-and-so's style, pulling a little bit of the GW box art, and all these things you've learned and all these things that you like and that have just become natural for you. At a certain point, you're going to quit trying to do exactly like one particular thing, and you're just going to morph into yourself. And that does not mean when you do that, you have your own style. What that is the first step of developing your own style. And I think that in and of itself can be a bit overwhelming, and it can be a bit of a hurdle, because you're no longer saying, I want it to look like that, so I know what the star I'm shooting for is. You kind of go into it a little bit wishy-washy on what the final outcome is going to be, because you're going to be playing with it as you go, and you're going to be decision-making as you go, because you're not just like, I base coat all the Plague Marines armor this green, and then I do this step. And it can look freaking amazing by the time you're done there. But when you break away from just trying to replicate and into doing it yourself, that is a new hurdle you'll face somewhere along your path of becoming a more advanced painter.
Yeah, it's a scary hurdle too. You know? It's like totally. It's like I don't want to say it's taking off the training wheels because that process can happen like way later in your painting career than like a toddler learning how to ride a bike. You know, you could copy schemes for a long time and get like and become an amazing technical painter.
Right,
and that can happen way later. So but that's definitely a hurdle.
And you can take it. You can take it to new heights as well. Like you can say like, I just love the GW box art. I want to keep getting better. I want to make it better and make it better. And I want to do the best version of it and pull in new things that box art doesn't have or those heavy metal painters don't use, but it still fits their style. And then you become Infernal Brush. and that dude's just like, he has his thing, but he's pushed it to this phenomenal heights. And if you don't know him, you follow him on Twitch, and I think he has a YouTube channel as well. But there's you don't have to like do something that's never been done before. You can make it your own through your own evolution.
Right.
But at a certain point, you're going to step away from that, and you're pushing the boat away from the dock. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you can't just walk back on land to feel safe again. And so that can be a little bit overwhelming, but you need to understand that like that out there in the water is where like the most excitement you're going to have in the hobby is going to be, is when you're cut free of all the lines of expectations and style, and you just evolve into where you're naturally going to become. And part of that's also a bit of like a journey too. That's where like when I have done stuff with like the Craft World Studio style and stuff, like I did all sorts of weird shit with that, and it's not at all like how I painted, and often it doesn't look anything like these guys. But like sometimes you just, like when you're pushing away, like you're just like, I'm just gonna pull in some weird things and then see what sticks and what doesn't, and that's eventually evolves into yourself. So it's a really fun part of the journey. Is why this is one of the best hobbies on the fucking planet, is because it never gets boring. It will never get old because there's always something different you can do in miniature painting, and it's totally unique to you and your journey.
Yeah, and that's also an incredibly empowering skill to have, to know that you can take any model and make it look reasonable, you know, without any reliance on anyone.
Yes.
But it's a hard skill to develop. It's a barrier. You suggested a great way to start to break down that barrier, which is just like what I was talking about with building a deck in Lorcana. Start with a pre-con, swap some cards out. Start with a paint scheme, change that blue color for Ultramarines to a light blue. What happens, you know? Mm-hmm. Start there. Or next step, buy that box of color schemes that you suggested. Okay, now I have a palette. Where the fuck do I put all these colors? What are the biggest colors? What are the smallest colors? That's step number 2. Like there are little things you can do that make it more and more challenging, to the point where you are fully out in the ocean and you are like making your own scheme from scratch.
Nice.
Welcome to the end of the podcast. Thank you for hanging out all the way to the end. That means so much to us. And it's like super helpful for YouTube's algorithm to be engaged the entire time. So thank you so much for doing that. You've already done us an amazing service. If you want to do more stuff to support the podcast in a free way, one way you can do that is by whitelisting our channel with various browser add-ons. We play an ad every 30 minutes. Watching that ad gives us probably like 1/8 of a cent. But if thousands of you do that, it's actually a decent amount of money, you know.
Yeah. Also, free thing. Leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify where you listen to us. If you listen to us, if you've already done that, check that box. You only got to do it one time, but that goes a long ways on podcast locales for us being pulled up so other people can find us. Mm-hmm. So that's a big thing. Also, liking the video and leaving a comment if you're watching on YouTube. That one you got to do a little bit more regularly. If you could do that every video, that'd be swell. But start with just this one. That pushes it up on the algorithm as well, so more people can find us, because there are more goody peepees out there. They just don't know they're goody peepees yet.
Not yet, yeah.
Right, yeah. You need to show them your peepee, so then then they'll show you that they're a peepee.
And then when you show the peepee and it's just a tendy, then you know you found another goody peepee.
You're like, oh, you looked. Wow, I don't know how to transition out of that.
I don't know. I was like, where's he gonna go with this?
We're going deeper. I got a little bit of a hangover from the after party, which is
for no reason
the bonus content of the podcast if you're a patron. So there's this. Look at this. I'm looping it right back in.
Got it.
So if you want to become a patron, if you're just a couple bucks a month, that goes a long ways, because people, don't necessarily want to sponsor us because we're not nice people. I don't know. Why don't people sponsor us, Scott?
I have No worries.
We don't know. Our podcast doesn't get sponsored. We're actually working on a way to try to work with other mini companies that we love and we stand behind. So that's in the works. But the main way this podcast still stays on the tracks is our wonderful patrons. So if you like it, if you listen to it, consider giving us a couple bucks each month. So then I can drive up here and we can keep the lights on in the place. That would go a long ways. Thank you, patrons. And you can do cool things in the podcast. Like you can come up with a topic, like today's topic.
Mm-hmm.
You can give your minis in for critique. And so we just shit on an ATST walker for 10 minutes today.
We just ruined Adam Stevens' whole week.
Sorry, Adam. We only do it because we love you, and it was already well painted, so we want to make sure you understand the parts that weren't well painted.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah, and we also do some other fun things. We talk about other miniatures that other people have painted recently in the world that we deep dive into a little bit and why we like them, why they're good. Or in my case, I try to talk bad about them, so it makes me feel bad about myself.
We also talk about new things we tried out in the hobby and it failed and have succeeded with. You can also pick up merch. That's all linked down in the show notes or description below, depending on where you're listening.
You can't get a diabetes shirt, though.
Sad. Not yet.
I mean,
what if it was just your face with a cowboy hat?
it just says diabetes.
I don't know. I guess. Would that offend you?
No.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of hilarious.
And even if it would, it wouldn't bother me if someone chose to do it. Because
trying to think of like what my version of that would be. Like if we had like two and it was like yours was diabetes, but it was like the same cowboy hat and like suit and like label and everything. And what the fuck would my say? I have no idea.
Ooh, I'm sure that the goody peepees will tell us down in the comments section.
I'm sure they'll all let me know what my fucking afflictions are and my personal deficiencies. Great. I think I might avoid the comment section on this next episode.
Oh, man. That would be a good shirt. We could sell that shirt. We could sell some diabetes. And yours just says, I'm with diabetes. You're pointing.
That's fucking solid. We gotta make it.
Please, somebody, if you know how to make shirt designs.
This is how we make shirts. We fucking implore our audience to make them.
Please, you're the more creative than us. Okay, that was pretty much it. I haven't peed yet. My thing hasn't started beeping for blood sugar low yet, but it's getting close. Talking more about diabetes. So it's a good time for us to wrap up this episode. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for watching and listening each and every episode. We'll try to get this one out on Monday for real this time. And we're back in 2 weeks. Until then, we will catch you on the
Flippity flop.